Hi everybody, Robert Lefebvre, First Bitcoin Bank. Welcome to my first video. First I got to start with a disclaimer. Obviously First Bitcoin Bank is not any bank in the traditional sense of the word. We don't take loans, we don't take deposits, we don't issue loans. A little bit of a hint about where the name came from. In development we have a hardware wallet, and the context of the word bank is in the context of a piggy bank. You put your coin in, you put your money in, and you can put it off in a safe place. So now that you know the story behind the name, it does segue right into the topic that I was going to talk about, and that is about FinCEN, the regulations against money laundering and drug trafficking that the Treasury Department has decided to apply to Bitcoin exchanges. And my thoughts are that that's just a false flag, a smokescreen for their real reasons. So let me start with a for instance. Let's suppose that they really did want to stop money laundering and drug traffic money from flowing, and they issued a ruling, a requirement that all FDIC banks start accepting Bitcoin as deposits, and at the same time they ordered FDIC to insure Bitcoin deposits. And then they went even further and ordered the banks to buy and sell Bitcoin. In one swift move, they basically cornered the US Bitcoin exchange market, became a monopoly, and because the banks are already FinCEN compliant, they would be putting the maximum force against money laundering and web traffic money movement in one swift move. Sounds like the way to go to me. So why don't they do it? I think it's because money laundering is just a smokescreen. That's not the real reason for coming against Bitcoin. Have you ever heard of ACH? It's the Automated Clearinghouse that all checks in the country go through. You know, you write a check, it's got to be cleared. Okay, it's cleared through the Automated Clearinghouse system. Now there are only two, and I'm going to go to Wikipedia here, and let's see. In 2000, we noticed the word Federal Reserve showing up here, right? And the Federal Reserve banks are collectively the nation's largest automated clearinghouse operator, and in 2005 processed 60% of commercial interbank transactions. The Electronic Payments Network, EPN, the only private sector ACH operator in the U.S., processed the remaining 40%. Okay, and then Fed ACH is the Federal Reserve centralized application software used to process ACH transactions. EPN and the reserve banks rely on each other for processing of some transactions when either party of the transaction is not their customer. So the Federal Reserve banks do 60% of the check processing. EPN does the other 40%, and it sounds like it's all on the same software, Fed ACH. Okay, now Bitcoin is revolutionary. There's no doubt. And in the talks discussions about how it's going to affect finance and everything. Credit cards is often talked about. BitPay, Tony Galippi is doing awesome things. Basically, a credit card replacement enables merchants to accept Bitcoin and have it transferred to their bank as local currency. So Tony brings up, the inadequacy of the credit card system, and Bitcoin definitely is much more efficient than the credit card systems, which were designed in the 50s. Okay, but very little is talked about when it comes to Bitcoin's effect on checking. Now, if I've got a Bitcoin wallet and I want to make a payment to somebody and they accept Bitcoin, I don't need to write a check. So Bitcoin not only replaces credit cards, but it also replaces checking. And if, in my original scenario, if all the banks in the country suddenly started accepting Bitcoin deposits, what would it do to their check account business? It would be devastated. I wouldn't say that it would be totally wiped out. There'll always be late adopters, and I mean, email didn't wipe out the post office. It just severely reduced it. And that's going to be the effect of Bitcoin on bank checking. So now we see that the one that has a really large stake in this is the Federal Reserve. So we know that the Federal Reserve has a lot on the table against Bitcoin. They have, they believe they have the ability to create money out of thin air, again, indefinitely. Nature says that there's no such thing as a free lunch, and yet the heads of our government think that there is such a thing. So not only is that on the table, but even if they had a legitimate system free of the fraud of creating money out of thin air, they still stand to lose ACH. So there's a lot on the table by for the Federal Reserve. That, I think, is the real reason that they're coming against Bitcoin. We don't hear much about Bitcoin and how it's going to be used instead of checks. We hear about it being used instead of credit cards. We hear it being talked about if there could be loans processed or using Bitcoin, etc. But we don't ever, hardly, I can't remember anyone talking about Bitcoin replacing checks. So, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next video.